Coach, we'll start with you here because one of your favorite segments isn't an official must-win segment, just a must-win question. Is this a must-win?
For who?
Well, I like to leave it a little open-ended. It's Kansas City, but I want to, if you want to do a dance.
Yeah,
Let's do a dance.
It is not a must-win, but it's a game. I don't really look forward to that many early season games, but this is definitely one.
Checked out the schedule, Coach.
Yeah,
Circled some games. It's been almost a decade
guy.
with you.
Yeah.
I've got you on my side on this. I love it.
The role that Kansas City's in, they haven't been in for so long. To actually be the team that's hunting as opposed to being hunted. It's such a unique situation for not just the team, but for Patrick Mahomes. And coming off the performance they had, was it 6 sacks, 3 turnovers, 23 minutes time of possession, to be absolutely dominated in the Super Bowl, and then have an opportunity to, you're never going to avenge a loss like that, but at least to recalibrate and hopefully recalibrate in a meaningful way that early in the season. It's going to be important. And it's also going to be important from Philadelphia's perspective to gauge where they are. Was that just a hot streak that they had at the end of the season where they hit it right, or is that legitimately the team that they're going to be moving into next season?
Yeah, I don't think it's a...
I'm sorry, I'm gonna let this clip play out, but a hot streak. They just went on like a 16-game hot streak, so then the whole season was just a hot streak. Like, oh my gosh, the whole season was just a hot streak.
Must win. I think Kansas City is mentally tough enough to, if they do lose that game, to know you've got all season to build and improve. And look, how many regular season games have they lost to Buffalo? And then they beat them in the playoffs. Now, this is different because Philly had beaten them in the postseason. But I just think that they'll be able to survive. If they do lose this game, they'll be fine. I would say it's probably a must not get blown out.
Oh,
like if Philly was to beat
Took
them
my take.
like they beat them in the Super Bowl, again, I think Chiefs are mentally tough. Remember a few years ago when they started a season poorly. I can't remember what their record was. It was around 500 or something. And people were starting to write them off, and then they started having fun, and they start winning again. And
like 3 and 5.
They come back, right?
They had a 3-5 stretch. They didn't start 3 and 5.
Yeah. But they came back from that. So that shows the mental toughness of this team. But I do think if they got blown out and basically beat like they did in the Super Bowl, that would be interesting to see if they met them in the Super Bowl, how they would.
Well, yeah. So that is a very specific scenario that I would agree with you on. If they were to get blown out and then also both teams make the Super Bowl again, Philly would have a significant mental edge. Like, and by the way, they beat them. They beat them the last time they played because that's when Sirianni was screaming at the fans.
Right.
So I do not believe Kansas City has must-win regular season games. And I think that this is another instance where I see, because I still think Kansas City is, I understand this one game, they are the team trying to get revenge, but I still think they are the other team's Super Bowl on their calendar. I think even this year, if the same teams play the Chiefs and play the Eagles, I think the Chiefs is the marquee game because the Chiefs are the marquee team.
Can I pivot off that? If the Eagles beat the Chiefs, do you think that holds for the rest of the year in this game?
I don't.
Because I understand what you're saying, kind of a dynasty. You guys got one.
Yeah, and so I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just 100% wrong. Because everyone's talking about beating the Philadelphia Eagles this year, okay? You got all the teams coming out there saying, you have the Detroit Lions saying, we're ready to face the Eagles. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers saying, we're ready to face the Eagles. The Rams, the Commanders, the Ravens are out there saying, oh, if we were in the Super Bowl, we would have beaten the Eagles. Oh, the Bills, we would have beaten the Eagles. So no. Okay, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They dominated the Kansas City Chiefs. So we can stop with this invention. Oh, every time someone plays the Kansas City Chiefs, it's their Super Bowl and all that. It depends on how the seasons unfold. Everybody wants to beat the Buffalo Bills. Everybody wants to beat the Baltimore Ravens. Everybody wants to beat the Chiefs. Everybody wants to beat the Eagles. Everybody wants to beat these top teams, but right now, at the peak of it, they want to beat the Eagles. It feels good to beat the Chiefs. I think if you're another opposing fan base, especially if you're more of a random team like the Jacksonville Jaguars or something, it's like, yeah, of course. Of course. But the teams that actually really matter right now, like they want to get after the Philadelphia Eagles. But to be fair, since the Ravens and the Bills have struggled to beat the Chiefs and the Bengals like in the meaningful moments, you're still going to have that like gotta beat the Chiefs type mentality. And so I think it, is this a must win for Kansas City? I don't think it's a must win for either team at all. Even Mahomes said like it's early on in the season. I mean, he emphasized that like it's early on in the season, but it's still like going to be like an interesting matchup, great challenge to see where we're at. And like he recognizes, yeah, it's the second game of the season, right? I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles lost to the Atlanta Falcons. What was that? Was that the second game of the season? Whatever it was, the third or fourth game of the season. So like it's like, what are you going to do? So it's just not that. And that's why Brew kind of took my thing about the blowout. I think if the Philadelphia Eagles blew out the Kansas City Chiefs, it would be interesting. I do think the Kansas City Chiefs are strong enough to just be kind of like, okay, that was bad. And I don't think if they face each other again in the Super Bowl, they're going to be like, oh no, this team blew us out back-to-back times. I just think when you have Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Spags, you have that core, you're going to be able to rally, momentum. It's not to say that you're going to now be able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles in that third, what would be then the third game in a calendar year. But I don't think it's going to be like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Spags aren't going to be like, oh God, they're our kryptonite. How are we going to win? And then now the whole team is going to just be like, why the Eagles? Why anyone but the Eagles? That's just not how athletes are. And that's especially not how people who have won a tremendous amount like the Kansas City Chiefs have done. I think for the Philadelphia Eagles, winning this game would be still reaffirming because I do think that the Eagles have a lot of belief in themselves, but they're still in the stage where they are also kind of, I think really like any team is always kind of trying to reaffirm who they are year after year. Because you're a different team, it's a different year. I mean, even the same players are still have to convince themselves and still have to prove to themselves, I'm just as great as I was last year. Like Saquon Barkley this year has to also prove to himself again, I'm still that great. That's just the way it works. Just like how how fans and the franchises themselves, it's always kind of like, that was great what you did in 22 and 23, but like you didn't do it in 24. What are you going to do in 25? Right? And if you don't do what you did in the past, maybe we're going to move on from you. You're not going to get that contract, whatever it is. And like you feel that as a fan and you see the way how the franchises operate, that they operate professionally in that regard. The athletes feel it too. They recognize it. They're like, oh man, that's why sometimes people go in slumps, which slumps are obviously a lot more common in something like baseball or basketball. But it is because it's kind of this feeling of like, you got to fight up against it of like, man, I know I'm a great shooter. I know I'm great. But for the last 20 games, I'm shooting 30% right now. And it's just like, there is that feeling where you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like what the heck is happening? And like, you're just relying on your memory of your greatness at that point, because in real time, in the present moment, you're not great. Like it just is what it is in that moment. And it's just like, and if you're lucky enough, you've been in a slump before, you could just be like, I've been in this moment before. I know it's going to pass. Like there's a lot of mental gymnastics you kind of have to do. So it's like, that's why like these must wins it's always fascinating to me from a fan perspective on the outside looking in. I'm always like, not really a must win, not really this or that, but you do see the players do care. The Kansas City Chiefs absolutely wanted to beat the Buffalo Bills in the regular season, even though it's just a regular season game. And that's where I always push back with Nick, where he's just like, oh, the Chiefs don't care. There's no must win. Patrick Mahomes cares. When he lost to the Buffalo Bills that one game, he was on the verge of tears. He was screaming at the refs. I showed you the clip. He was going nuts. Like he was upset about it. You know, these guys are going all in. When the Kansas City Chiefs blocked the field goal against the Denver Broncos, they celebrated like they won the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for them, they didn't win the Super Bowl last year, so that was the high moment of their season. But they went nuts. Patrick Mahomes, they went racing on the field, going insane. When the Washington Commanders had that Hail Mary, they went berserk. I mean, they could not be happier. So these players always make these games matter because that's the beauty of football. There's that urgency. It does matter. So I appreciate being back in the corner with certain sports topics because you have to make it interesting. Because you could always say, it doesn't matter. It's September. And that's why when Nick says, there's no must wins, the regular season doesn't matter for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's like, that to me is always a cop-out. Because it just is. It really is. Because you could theoretically say that about all of these teams. Honestly. It doesn't really matter what the Baltimore Ravens do. It's how do you do it in the regular season. Doesn't matter, or how do you do it in the playoffs. Doesn't matter about the Buffalo Bills during the regular season. It's how do you play in the playoffs. Doesn't matter how many touchdown passes Jalen Hurts has during the regular season. Are you getting into the end zone in the playoffs? Doesn't matter that Jalen Hurts only threw for 175 yards in week 12. How many yards does he throw for in the Super Bowl? So you can always do that. And, but I do think if I'm thinking about it, and it's September 14th, and you're looking at this game, this is a must win for Kansas City or the Philadelphia Eagles. What I always go to is it's a must play well. But at the same time, since it's so early on in the season, I could explain a really bad game. I could, if the Philadelphia Eagles get blown out, they lose 40-0, okay? Unless they got blown out against, I think they played the Dallas Cowboys week 1, I think. Unless they got blown out back-to-back games, then you would be like, oh my gosh, what is happening? This offense looks awful. Are they already going to need to fire their offensive coordinator or something? But outside of like that, obviously very specific situation, it's just like, all right, week 2, they got blown out. They couldn't get any momentum going. It was tough. So-and-so fumbled on their, on our own 10-yard line. Like, you could explain it away. The Buffalo Bills got rolled by the Baltimore Ravens. It meant nothing. It really, at the end of the day, it meant nothing. And especially when games kind of get out of hand like that, it doesn't always tell you the story. So that's why you have to kind of find the reality of it. If the Philadelphia Eagles were just fundamentally not good, or the Kansas City Chiefs were just not good in that game, and you're like, oh, this is exposing a very specific weakness. That's why it's even less about the score, and it's actually how you played. When the Buffalo Bills got rolled by the Baltimore Ravens, it was just the way how the game unfolded. And once there was such a big enough lead, that defense was able to just tee off on the Baltimore Ravens, as even Chris Collinsworth talked about. And so that's why a lot of times in football, you can see a score spiral. Sometimes you get beat by a lot, and it's because it's just like they're getting after every single weakness you have. And that is what the Philadelphia Eagles did against the Kansas City Chiefs. That wasn't a score that just spiraled. It was just that the Kansas City Chiefs could not get anything going from the jump. Like, that is kind of a fundamental difference. And anytime the Philadelphia Eagles face some resilience or some resistance or their own roadblocks, whether it be an interception, whether it be a tough sack or a 3-and-out or whatever, whatever it may be, they were able to show, oh no, we can overcome this. You get a tough offensive pass interference call on the first drive. It's like, it's okay. We can kind of overcome this. They were able to overcome Saquon Barkley not getting going on the ground. There's just kind of different levels of scores. So that's why answering this question this far out, it becomes difficult to kind of really break down, honestly. So that's why my default will be like, it's a must play well for both, but it will be interesting because if both teams lose if one of the teams loses opening day, I think the Chiefs play the Chargers and the Eagles play the Cowboys. If they're both 0-1 or one of them's 0-1, yeah, it's tough because those teams outside of the Cowboys, it probably would make more sense for the Chiefs because if the Chiefs lose to the Chargers and then they lose to the Eagles, it's like, okay, well, you just played 2 great teams and you lost to both of them. You would start to be like, uh-oh, what's happening here? If, the Philadelphia Eagles just lose to the Cowboys opening day, you're automatically going to have an uh-oh in Philly. You just lost to the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott and Schottenheimer. Like, there's going to be like a uh-oh type of situation here. So I don't know. Hopefully that made sense. It's kind of hard to figure out a must win in September. For September in July. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about this being a must win for either the Philadelphia Eagles or Kansas City? Both, neither. Let me know in the comments below. I also do encourage you guys to try to actually also back yourselves in the corner and answer the question rather than also just being like, who cares? Nothing's a must win, blah, 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 blah. Because that's what I kind of said at the top of this clip, where it's like sometimes just for the sake of conversation, you have to back yourself into a corner. which, like I said, I do appreciate. So I do encourage those types of comments rather than just saying, who cares, it's July, et cetera, et cetera. Or that it's not a must-win for Philly just because they won the Super Bowl or something, like, deeper conversation than that. But let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.